Thank you to all of you for coming out here tonight. For all of you who are joining us here in person and joining on live stream, welcome. I am so excited to be here with you talking to James. I first heard James speak last year at the CKA Summit, and I honestly had no expectations. I was like, I don't really know much about this, and I'll just pop my head in. And the story he told was just so moving. I literally was on the verge of tears. I'd never heard something that compelling, that resonated with me so deeply. So the fact that you've shared your story with the world through this book, which is incredible, and are here tonight to talk with us, to kind of share your insights, and that we all have an opportunity to ask questions. So please, if you haven't, go ahead and write some questions down. I'll try to get to them before the end of the event. But I just feel like it's a blessing. So I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you to all of you for coming. I don't think I really need to do an introduction because you're all here because he's here. But just to give some of the basic contours of your life and your journey, I'll just kind of run through some of the highlights. So, by the way, if I get anything wrong, feel free to just interrupt and give me that Korean knuckle love tap that my dad used to give me when I was a kid. Yeah. But James, you were born to Korean immigrants. Your father was a pediatrician. Your mother was a nurse. You grew up in New York, first in the Bronx and then in Long Island, where you were educated in the public education system. You went to Harvard College, and then you took 2 years to teach high school before you went back to Harvard to get your law degree. And then after you graduated, you made the precocious decision to not practice law. Instead, you went into finance, where you had a thriving career in private equity. In 2013, you took on an unusual role. You became the chairman and CEO of Ashley Stewart, which is a fashion retailer that has historically had very deep connections to the Black community. And after bringing the company back from the brink of liquidation, you transformed the company into this incredible success story. It was just absolutely amazing. And you read about it in the book, and it's been all over the media. And you really instill kind of an approach to business and life, which is pretty remarkable, and that we'll talk about here. And then after 7 years, you transitioned to the next chapter of your life, where today you're doing a number of things, including teaching at the MIT Sloan School of Management. You're teaching at Duke Law School. You are the Johnson Chair of Entrepreneurship at Howard University. Mm-hmm. And of course, you've written a best-selling book, Red Helicopter, which is a parable for our times, lead change with kindness plus a little math, which came out just 2 months ago and debuted at number 7 in USA Today's best-selling book list across all formats and channels. Amazing. So I just want to say how excited I am that you're here with us tonight, and to please give James a very warm welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was all perfect.
Yeah, I know. I got all the facts right. I didn't get any knuckles slapped on my head. So I just want to say, when I read this book, it was kind of such an uncanny experience for me. There's so many parallels with my own life, and there's so many aspects of your story and your experience that I found so relatable. And in reading it, I felt like I was learning about myself as I was learning about you. And there are just kind of multiple points of commonality. Like, both of our fathers went to Seoul National University. They had promising careers, but they gave it up to come to this country to start from scratch and to work really hard. And they had lives of quiet dignity, but they endured much hardship. We both grew up in New York. We both went to law school. We're now practicing now. We both made career decisions that made our parents absolutely befuddled and exasperated, including at one point going into the world of retail, which my father still has not forgiven me for. But beyond all the superficial things, the thing that really resonated with me about what your story was, apart from all the things that you've accomplished, all the accolades, the fancy titles that have adorned your career, you don't define yourself or your success or measure success on the basis of these external indicators of success. But really, the way that you identify yourself, the way that you measure success is really about the relationships that you've built and the positive externalities that you've created. And at the center of this is this notion of kindness, right? It's at the center of your approach to business and life and leadership. And I feel like that's a message. It's something that more leaders really need to learn how to lead with. And I just want to thank you for sharing these insights through this book and for being here today. It's a message that I think we all really need to hear. So I just want to unpack all this, and I was thinking, why don't we start with the experience that really brought your story to the mainstream audience? So Ashley Stewart. Now, at one point in your career, you were enjoying a very successful career in private equity, and then you made this inexplicable decision to give that up, leave a well-paying, prestigious job to go run a failing company that catered to people who look exactly not like you, so plus-sized black women. Why on earth did you make that decision? And more importantly, how did you explain this to your parents without getting disowned?
It was 2013, and I'm really thrilled that the young people are in this audience. So a lot of the way I'm going to answer this is really speaking to them, if that's okay, to the adults. I was 42 years old at the time, and it was not always easy growing up with dual identities in this country, right? It took a long time to figure it out, and we're going to get into that later. But I'm sitting here with like the resume that my parents wanted, and that I wanted, but it was really it meant a lot to my parents. They didn't know what private equity was, but they would say, "Oh, it seems you're doing pretty well, right? Like money, like," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay." But what you said about my parents about quiet dignity, I saw more quiet dignity in my parents than I did in these tall buildings in private equity. And it was starting to really leave a void here. I used to teach high school. So for me, it's all about civics first and the economy second. And it's been important to know how to make money and use money, but it's not something that was the primary currency of our household. We didn't have it. Right? We had other currency. And so that's where I was. I was a father of 3. I'm looking at my children. They're biracial kids. My dad's dying of Parkinson's. And my dad took care of so many families. My mother, too. My mother intentionally served at a nursing home for Korean War veterans. Everything my parents did they were super intentional about sort of the circularity of life and saying thank you. That's just the way we were raised. And I felt something was missing in my life at the time. And I was a little bit, not disgusted is a good word, actually, with some of the greed, actually. And sort of, I was now part of a system that I felt that my parents so desperately wanted me to be part of. But that was the same framework that really made their life very difficult, actually. And they were proud of me for being part of that, and I didn't feel so proud of myself. Does that make sense? And so that was it, and then it was at a critical juncture, and there was this company called Ashley Stewart that served a group of women, let's face it, being a woman, plus size, moderate income, black, the world's not particularly designed for you to be successful. You have to work that much harder. And these women reminded me a lot of my mother, because at the time I'm watching my mother carry my dad as a nurse in their apartment, taking care of my dad who had lost all agency at this point. And she's firing all the help that I'm trying to give them. Money couldn't solve the problem. I kept paying for things, and she would say, we can't have people in our house. It's a very Korean thing, too. And I felt like useless, actually. And I didn't like the way the company was being treated by the capital markets that I was a part of at this point. And I went to law school. I know how the legal systems work. You know how the legal systems work. There was a reason this company was failing. I mean, it was very clear to me. And I had a moment, and I just sort of said, I don't think shouldn't be talking about this company in this way, because in private equity, these were assets. It had gotten very callous. Capital had gotten detached from people. It increasingly is happening. And I just raised my hand. I said, I guess I'll do it for 6 months. And then I disappeared. And so, and I wasn't this was not a heroic act. It wasn't like, I'm going to do it for 6 months. It was forlorn, a feeling of, I can't look away. Like, I'm accountable for this. And it was an investment that I had made in a former employer. And so I had lost agency as well, that I didn't really have decision-making authority. And so I did it for 6 months, and then, and we'll get into it more, but it became very clear to me that I was right, that there was more to this, the social capital in the business. The women really did remind me of my mom. The more I met them, like what they did for their children, the crap that they endured, actually, right? The quiet, real leadership that I didn't see in Wall Street and private equity, real leadership. There's a big difference between being a CEO and being a leader, all right? So it was real leadership. And I thought about how small this country made my mom feel many times, and I didn't like it. And so the way I approached it, I almost had a second chance of being a son of my mother and dad again in my 40s, except this time I was more mature, and I had more skill sets. And I was able to sort of talk to these black women who were fluent in English in a way I couldn't speak to my mom when we were growing up because my Korean is poor, her English was poor. It's really hard to talk about these very philosophical, existential things when you don't speak the language. And I could speak to the women fluently. So it was just a gift to be able to do this. And after 6 months, I tried to share the gift with the world and say, no, this company is this, and I've redesigned it, the numbers are this, the legal system's this. It's actually not about clothes, it's about social compact and about small business and neighborhoods and the importance of relationships. And we're entering potentially in a period of civil war and dystopia, and that these realness and the real relationships, these will have real economic value. I said all these things, and the world looked at me and said, what? You know, what? And a lot of it was very superficial, James. We don't care about this demographic. I got that a lot. And it's almost because I'm Korean in some ways, it was okay for them to say certain things about the black community that perhaps, but I heard these words before. They were directed at my parents. I've heard these words before. And they also couldn't get beyond the fact, they're like, oh, James, you're Korean. Like, what could you possibly know about?
Yeah, how did you build the empathy? How did you build the connection, just given that you come from such, superficially a disparate background?
You know, again, this was a gift where in 2013, the first town hall I did with the employee staff and ultimately with the women in the stores who were more important to the story than the people at the corporate office. These were women on the front lines in the neighborhoods. I had no choice but to be super honest. I'd never been a CEO, had not had a retail job since being a busboy. I was a man. I was not black. I am not fashionable. I had to say all of these things because what place did I have? I was honest. And it was a relief. Right? I said, all of these things I am not, except the only thing that I am is that I'm the only one who showed up. I'm the only one who cared enough to be here. Yeah. And that's it. And much of the room sort of like chuckled and like they looked at me like I was, but the women were relieved, particularly the black women in the stores. They said, this is the first time someone's actually telling us the truth. And we bonded in that way. And then many years later, I would ask them, we built on truth and trust, and they saw me fly every week at 5 in the morning. And
you had to fly to get to work.
To work, from Boston to, I'm away from everything. I ripped up my life. I mean, if you think about it, I went away. I had no friends, I didn't have many black friends, was not a retailer, I didn't know anybody. I was away from my family, it was being alone. And I found myself again. In many ways, I found as we're going to get into, it's my Koreanness during my 40s. And it really was black women who really reminded me and taught me, and the things they loved the most about me were the most Korean things, right? They said to me, you have so much soul. And then I said, do you mean Chung? And like, do you care so much about other people? Do you mean mutualism? Right? So I designed a lot of the economics was like putting in fancy financial flow terms like, ge.
Right.
A lot of the things of Korean culture growing up, I just institutionalized it in private equity terms or legal terms. And so that's how we developed trust. I was honest. And to this day, they said, we knew we could feel your heart. And they said, you're like a really nice person. Like you care so deeply about people. And I just said, I do. And is that bad? Is that a bad thing to care about people and to show appreciation and be generous? Because that quality sometimes is not perceived as a great thing in private equity and I've always, to me, being generous and being kind and compassionate, these are signs of confidence, right? Of having abundance and sort of allowing other people to win with you. It's not a competition. It's not a fight to the death and there's one seat available and I got to win it. I was like, I don't want to live like that. And I don't think great leadership is that. And I don't think a society has to be like that either.
Can we talk about that town hall you mentioned? And in your book, it's kind of a seminal moment where you're addressing everyone for the first time. And the way that you describe it in the book, it's almost like the word kindness came out almost extemporaneously, like it just kind of, but when you go further into the book, it's clear that this notion of kindness didn't just come out of thin air. It connects to your lived experiences, all the way going back to your youth, and even beyond that to the lived experiences of your parents and grandparents. Can you talk a little bit about like where this came from? Because it was not something that was top of mind, but again, it resonated based on experiences you had as a child.
So what Philip was saying about, this is a parable, so that first town hall in many ways, the chaos, right? People were scared, the company was about to go away, 22 years of fighting, tension. It's a metaphor for perhaps our country, right? And when you had nothing, we had nothing. And I said, well, if we're gonna rebuild and have a chance, I said, it came out of this place, like an intuitive place, like the intuition, and Einstein's written about this. Asia, there's a little bit, I think, more, not respect, but appreciation for intuition historically than in the US education system, which it really emphasizes like deductive. But deduction starts, the creative process, science process starts with intuition. It's imagination, it's creativity. So in that cafeteria, it came from that place where in lieu of saying anything deductive and brilliant, I just said, can we be kind and be mathematically honest? Because if we can't do these two things, we have no shot. In fact, if I were addressing like the country today, I would say, can we start with kindness and be mathematically honest?
Yeah.
And if we can't be honest, it's truth. Like kindness and math live at an intuitive level. It's the level of like physics, right? It's truth. It's not man-made laws. And so that person that I realized like sort of some of the things that was gnawing at me during and I love private equity. I love investing. I didn't like the culture of it. I thought that it's like, I didn't like the ego of it. I just want the truth. I think good investors find the truth. There's no ego. You just want to find the truth and make good investments. So this was how I was raised. I mean, in my household, we didn't have helicopter parenting. And particularly my mother, it was a real gift to me. She just said, Kanyang, she was like, my dad would want me to live a little bit more of a structured life, and my mom would say, Yobo, just let him run. He's not hurting anyone. Just let him be. And so that was the biggest gift my mom gave me. And so that feeling that I had of being accepted by black communities, they didn't have to. And so I would walk into the store. I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was just so relieved to find a group of people and friends. They just liked me. Like, they didn't care I went to this private equity. They didn't care about the credentials. They just met me like this and said, okay, like, let's do this. It had been a long time that I had that in my life, because people always wanted something from me. Like, it's like, where did you go to school? What can you do for me? It's just not how I want to live my life. I'm not a transactional person like that. And so that feeling brought memories of this, why it's called Red Helicopter. It reminded me of that feeling that I had in a very small family room in Setauket, New York, when I brought home a toy red helicopter from kindergarten. And I was playing with it, and my parents thought I took it from school. They thought then they messed up because they didn't know American customs, and they were worried I was the only one who didn't exchange gifts at Christmas in kindergarten. And they said, "Oh, we're sorry, James." And then it turned to my dad getting kind of annoyed with me and saying, "Why don't you know why you got the helicopter?" Right? And so it's a lot of these mixed feeling memories. It's bittersweet memories. And remember the old Korean style parenting, like you have to stand up in front of your parents and you have to picture me like this. They said, "Why did you get the helicopter?" And my face is bright red. And I'm like, I don't know. Why don't you know? I said, and then it was the red helicopter. It was like a sort of a bittersweet, not great feeling. And then a few weeks later, my dad finding out why I got it. And instead of saying, "You did such a generous thing," and the family came in to reward you, instead it was more Socratic. And he said, "Why are you sharing your lunch with this boy? This lunch that your mom wakes up at 5 in the morning every day to make you this perfect Korean, it's love, perfect lunch. Why are you giving half of your lunch away?" And then I thought I was in trouble again. Like we didn't have a lot of money, or "I'm sorry, Mama," like I'm not ungrateful. But I remember being so confident in my answer. It's one of the few times I sort of eyeballed my dad, actually. And I said, "He doesn't have lunch. I just give him half my lunch, my friend. Why wouldn't I?" And I thought I was
Trouble.
But my dad, the look he gave me, I just remembered. I remember him looking at me. He got very emotional, which men, we have a hard time sometimes with that. I think Korean men have a hard time with that. We have to work on that. He was very
Pride?
just proud.
Yeah.
And he just said, "Oh, my 5-year-old boy is so wise." The look he gave me is that here we are struggling in America, everything's a fight, a scarcity, and my little boy lives with such magnanimity, so generous.
Yeah.
And that's the look he gave me. And I rarely saw that look, that emotional look. And he told me, he said, the boy that you give the lunch to, who was a white kid, his mommy died this summer. So his dad just wanted to meet the boy that was feeding his son. And the dad had 4 kids, and he was beside himself. He didn't have time to pack lunch. And I just remember doing this and saying, "Oh," and it felt good. There was no expectation of reward. I just did it. And I also was like, what's the big deal? Today, I could come up with 50 reasons why I should not have given that boy half my lunch.
What do you think changed?
Right.
Because one of your themes is that when you're a 5-year-old kid, your intuition, you intuit what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
Yet as we get older, things change. It kind of gets obscured, gets covered up. Why do you think that happened? And why do you think it took you so long to rediscover the thing that you knew innately ever since you were a child?
I think I'm going to answer in 2 ways. One, it's every child, every adult, every society. And then I think there's a special Korean immigrant, Korean American dollop of ice cream to put on this too. We have systems for good reason. We have to have law and order. There are systems of the way society is organized, and we want to generally put people in the way the systems work in verticals. It's very hard to live laterally, right? Kids learn in systems. So at MIT, a lot of the work I'm doing, it's in it's systems. It's nonlinear thinking.
Yeah.
It's generally, that's how we learn as children. Like, we are nonlinear thinkers. It's imaginative thinkers. And we don't know anything, and so we have courage to try everything. And then at some point, with the credentials and the need for jobs, and you become a little bit less courageous, right? And the goal is to get to a place where you can leverage and grind and repeat processes and make a lot of money by doing something over and over and over and over again. And then I think also with Korean culture, there's more of an inclination to be, in our generation, to fit in, to get into those systems.
Assimilate.
Which meant what? Like get good grades, go to the schools, get this, get a job. Like, shh. just do it. Like, fit in. Don't speak up too much. If you get some stuff hurled at you, just
Don't complain.
don't complain. And that's what it was. And for me, that never sat well for me. And it's not because I wanted to argue. It's more just, I think when you absorb that things, it takes away your dignity over time. There's a cost to it. And I was particularly sensitive to that because I lived most of my life looking at life through the eyes of my mother. Mm-hmm. I hated how she was made to feel in this country. I hated it. And this was like the most important person in the world to me. Like, I think just the best leader I've ever met. Everything I've emulated in leadership is my mother. And yet in this country, she was made to feel like this. And I couldn't keep my mouth shut. And you'll see, in the book, I did
stories
not.
you had where, your mom went to a store and the person was essentially kind of making fun of her because of her accent.
Yeah.
And you went up and you basically told that person and the manager, and that person got fired. That resonated with me in so many ways because I've seen that happen to my mom so many times, where she'd be discriminated against, she'd be ignored, people make fun of her. Even just recently, during the Asian hate movement, there was an incident where my mom was trying to get to the hospital and she got lost. She goes to a gas station and she went inside for directions, and then a person in a pickup truck blocked her from getting out. And then when she asked him to move, he screamed at her like, "You can't tell me what to do. This is my country," right? Even to this day and age. And that just, the anger that you felt, I felt so viscerally. And I felt like we have to do something. We have to go out and speak. And, for me, one of the things I want to ask you about, we were raised to keep your head down. If there's injustice, you endure it. You don't want to speak up. You don't want to, create a reason for someone to, attack you or discriminate against you. But for us, we have this opportunity. We have, I would argue, the obligation to speak up. So when this happened to my mom, I felt like, look, I want to, we can't just bear it. And then I want my children to see that it's not okay. So, we went out and we organized rallies and protests. And I feel like we have to speak. We have the opportunities. One thing that I really appreciate about you is, we both had parents who told us hey, stick to the tried and true path. And we both did things that in our parents' view seemed crazy, that were rebellious. We spent so much, we sacrificed so much to give you these opportunities, and this is how you reward us. But the dialogue I've had with my parents over time is no, it's because you gave these opportunities that we have the obligation and opportunity to speak up in a way that you didn't. And so, we're not dishonoring you.
We're honoring.
We are honoring you, your legacy. And we're now in a position where we can speak up and say something. And the fact that you're speaking up, and you did something. You could have just followed the status quo. Kindness is not a word that comes out of the words of many people working in private equity, but writing this book, that's the thing that I would argue we have to do. It's our obligation to honor the legacy of our parents.
My entire 40s, so everyone knows, after 6 months, when no one gave money, and I was supposed to go home. And I just couldn't look the other way, so I stayed. I called in my favors from that network that I had built, and I got money. And I told the ladies, I said, "I'm staying. I'm your new CEO for good," which was not easy, right? I ripped up I wrote in the book, no law firms were taking me to Pebble Beach anymore. And my identity was now CEO of a twice bankrupt black women's apparel company. And I'm very honest in the book, it wasn't like I did this. It was I can't look the other way. And over time it became increasingly clear to me a lot of this was, and my mom finally understood it too at my dad's wake.
Yeah.
She's like, "Wow, this is me." And I'm like, "Yep. It's you." And so the way that I spoke with the women at Ashley Stewart was the way I spoke to my mom at the kitchen table when she would say, "Oh, it's me." She would hide the kimchi or blame herself for not knowing some ridiculous custom that she has no reason to know, I would always say, Mom, it's not you. You just don't know the game. It's like playing Monopoly, right? And she didn't know the game. So I was like, why are you blaming yourself? Look what you're doing. And so that's how I approached it with the women at Ashley Stewart. I'm like, you're good. It's not you. Let's just, what I had the ability to do at that point, so it starts there. I'm saying this to the young people. You're okay, right? You're American and you're Korean, and you're going to mess up and you're not perfect. And you're going to get B's and C's and you're going to fail. It's okay. Okay?
The parents are like, no!
Yeah. You're going to be okay. And like, you're going to learn also that the rules of Monopoly, when you go around the board 80 times like this, some of the rules are not written. And you have to learn those rules. And you have to figure out a life where you have more free parking spots and community chess, and that there's a lot more chance on that board than it looks like. Try not to go to jail if you can, but but like if you land on it, you land on it. So that's but these are the things that this sort of freedom, and that's what I did, and my mom finally understood. And I think the world now, for 7 years, a lot of the world kind of knew what we were doing. But now, where we are, the consciousness, I think we were right in 2013. Some of the things I was predicting, I think we were 20 years ahead, and it's happening. And so, it's been really, for me, it's really, I can't explain the feeling at the CKA Gala. Like, it was for the Korean community to see, to really understand what I was doing, and it wasn't just about black women, right? But I couldn't, I didn't feel like I had to or should say it. I just was doing what I was doing, and then it took some time, but that gala, it meant a lot to me. It was just a thank you, and yeah, I'm doing the best I can, and it is possible. So when, Philip, you were talking about what's not, it was impossible. Everyone, it's not possible. It's impossible for this company, after 2 liquidations, not having Wi-Fi's, never made money, no access to capital markets, Korean guy, no experience, black one. It's possible. And so I'm speaking now because I cannot sit here and have people say, when I read the paper, we're doomed, it's not. We did it. We did it. And it wasn't just money. It was actually, money was like the 4th thing we used. Yeah. It was social compact. It was ethics. It was character. It was principles. It was handshakes. We did that. And then we used tech and money to scale it. But we started from the beginning again. We said, can you be kind? Will you be mathematically honest? And if we can do that, then we can scale with not a lot of money.
Can I ask you about the concept of duality and counterpoint, which is the theme in your, one of the things that I really admire about you is the fact that you were able to reconcile the dual identities. You're the son of Korean American immigrants. At the same time, you're a successful business leader. And a lot of times they don't seem like they go together easily. And it's something that I think, just talking to a lot of the younger people here, growing up, I really struggled with my identity. I didn't feel like I fit in either community. Yeah. I didn't feel like I was fully accepted. And many times I felt like my Korean identity was something that was a liability for me, that I was often ashamed of. And in my career was something that held me back. Yet you've been able to reconcile these in a way that rather than being liabilities, these are assets. They make you stronger. And that's something that took me a long time to figure out on my end. But I was wondering if you could just talk about that. Like, how is it that you were able to bring these two halves together in counterpoint to create something that's greater than the sum of its?
I mean, I had those same feelings, that it was a liability and that there was shame. And the way I grew up, we were the only minority family. And, in many ways, I was the least likely, but maybe for that reason, the most responsible, accountable to do what I did. But I was always sort of the only minority or only Asian person in the rooms I was in, private equity, golf club, whatever, you name it. And for a while that was a point of pride, right? That my parents were like, oh, you made it. And then as I got older during this time, I said, no, it's not. Why am I the like, this is ridiculous. And I started opening the door from the inside. I'm saying, like, why? Like, come here. And so during my 40s is when it all became really clear to me about why I was doing what I was doing. The things, again, that the women most loved about me, it was a lot of the Korean qualities. And I'm like, oh, Chung, got it. And then I sort of feel like it was almost like peace or just a reconciliation of or elimination of Han. It was almost like a spiritual experience what happened in my 40s. I made peace with a lot of things, and I was able to bury my parents the way that they should have been buried. They were mourned by all of the Korean community and then all of the black community came to honor my parents. And I just was sitting there, and I remember just looking at this and saying, this is beautiful.
Yeah, that's touching. You didn't even tell anyone, and they found out there.
Because I was too tough guy. I didn't want to tell people that I needed help, that my dad died, my daughter was almost died, same week, and I didn't tell anyone. And all the black women came and sort of hugged my mother, and they said, "Oh, Mrs. Rhee, you did a good job." And then they came to me and said, "Why didn't you ask for help?" And I said, I didn't want to be a burden. They said, and I cried. Now you have to picture tough guy James sobbing in front of all of his parents' friends, all of my colleagues, all of my finance friends. I couldn't stop crying. And that moment, which was very difficult, but it was actually a moment of joy. It was beautiful. And after that moment, I just said, I will never, I don't need external validation anymore. This is success. This moment, success. And so where I am now, it's the way I think about my identity is the world wants everyone to put you in a box. No one here is boxable. And increasingly with code, right, with 0, 1, 0, 1, I'm not a 0 or 1. I wrote in the book, I'm a 2. You're all 2s.
I'm a 3. Sorry.
3, 4. It's the beauty of humanity. It's imperfect. It's messy. Korean history and culture, it's messy. That's what makes it beautiful. I think Korean culture is so beautiful. It's so creative. It's beautiful, right? And you can't put that in an algorithm. And for the young people, don't live a life that's an algorithm. It's a gift. You're not an algorithm. And so that's how I think about this. And then musically, there's a term, I started thinking about this, that I'm a bit of a suppressed musician. I'm not a professional musician, but high musicality, my brain works in music. And there's a term in music called counterpoint, where there's usually in dominant music theory, you have a melody and a harmony. So there's a dominant culture, and then you're American, it's Korean. Right? Something like that. Or life or work, increasingly, life. So I think counterpoint is a better way to live. It's 2 melodies. So it's beautiful, beautiful. Work, life. And what happens when you design 2 perfect melodies like this, good melodies, there's an emergent 3rd melody that's even more complex and beautiful. So for me, my identity, work, I sing work, it's not the same, right? It's not exact. It's not the same. But I never do things at work that would make my life discordant, that I would be ashamed of, that it would ruin this melody. And then increasingly now, I'm American, I sing Springsteen, I'm a rocker. When I sing, it's rock.
We're going to show you later.
But my Korean identity, it's clear.
Yeah, I love that analogy.
It's both.
I love that analogy.
And it's enabled me to be better. It's the best of this culture, the best of this culture, and I'm singing it like this and saying, It's like the best of hits from remember the old 1970s, the greatest hits? I'm taking like the best from Western culture, the best from Korean culture. I'm saying, what do you think? And I think that's globally where the world might go. I really believe that Korea and Korean leaders, we can lead because we're used to chaos. And Korean culture is it's not linear. It's like words like maum, right? Heart and mind. There's a oneness to Korean culture, and it's in us. And the world needs that type of thinking right now. It's not in a grinded out world right now. We're at a massive inflection point. It's the cafeteria. It's chaos. I think Korean people, I think we can be a really strong global leader. And the country of Korea, they're struggling with it right now too, just in an analogous way to here. I think our parents' generation, they survived. Like Korea survived the war. Like our parents survived. And then they said to us, hey, strive. Right? Striving. And Korea strived too after the IMF bailout. They're like, we're going to do it. What now? Now you're the 7th largest GDP, like you have this Korea stable and growing. It's the fastest internet. Birth rates are declining, highest suicide rates, highest alcoholism rates. And for us here in Korean Americans, instead of striving, can we get to a point now that we're in a more stable position of helping these younger people not strive, but like thrive? And that's very different from surviving and striving, is to thrive. And I think thriving comes from a mindset of abundance, of having the confidence that, if you have a bad day or a bad year, you don't lose the game. Right? It allows you to take risk and to sort of breathe. And so, I think that's the next stage for Korean Americans and Korea is can you thrive? Can you lead? And what does that mean? And increasingly in my life, I'm getting pulled to Korea. Like the book is getting translated, I think December 4th is coming out in Korean. And there's a lot of very well-placed nunim in Korea whose hands are in this book. And so Korea is waiting for this book right now.
So I want to ask you about that. So, the book is looking, in some ways, part memoir, looking back, but you wrote it to be looking forward. So I want to ask you, why did you write this book when you did, and what's next for you?
So it came out in 2024 this year for a reason. There's a pretty big election happening in our country. And if you look at the book tour, it's not so much a book tour, it's really a public convening. It's like the Federalist Papers. I want you to know that this book gets received. Part of the reason why I think it's doing so well is that it's not prescriptive. There are no lists. I'm not mad. I'm not yelling. It's sort of what do you think? What do you think? Or in Korean, it's more like son 잡고 가자. 가자. Let's go. Let's walk. What do you think? And so I wrote it for this year for people in a nonpartisan way to just not be so angry. There were a lot of angry people in the cafeteria in 2013, and I wasn't angry. I just said, it's sad. So I was like, I'd rather you be sad. And then sad can translate into joy. So that's why it came out this year. And it's not just and by the way, it's spreading, and what the heck is Red Hell? People are like, what is the book? What is this? And it's spreading word of mouth. It's like, just read it. We can't explain it, just read it. It's a book about life, right? And it's also a book about our social compact. So that's that. And then what it is broadly speaking, and I sort of intuitively knew where this was going. There's a lot of interest in turning this into a movie, 2 continents. There's interest in it as a rock opera. There's original music. Think about Hamilton. And music teaches. Music bridges left, right side brain. And there's a lot of neuroscience in this book that I don't talk about. It's literally written in E flat major. It's written in a key that inspires hope. It's written in the same key as Somewhere when Tony and Maria sing together in Leonard Bernstein West Side Story. It's the same key. And then in terms of the pedagogy, like I'm teaching at these schools because I'm pretty convinced that the main skill set that the young people we all need to have is adaptability and agility. So what I teach in these schools is a curriculum of agility. How do you make money and do it in civics, and do you understand neuroscience and org theory? It's all the things that don't get taught. I'm teaching people agency. Like, how do you have agency? And so that's where it's going. It's almost like Mr. Rogers, Trevor Noah in a new curriculum that's done in counterpoint in two cultures, that has a huge movie, ideology, books, music. And in some ways, to sum it up, like what it really, think about it this way, 80 years ago, 90 years ago, Disney started, there was a philosophy of Disney, an operating system, and that it was an escape from reality, like you would feel good. I think what the world needs over the next 80 years is reality to escape from simulated reality. Does that make sense? I think like people like ask, hey, like wake up, like don't be a 0 or 1, like come here. And I think Korean culture, I think it's not an accident that I have Korean genetics and was raised in a Korean household. This book is Chung. Like the TED Talk I did about goodwill.
Incredible.
If I were fluent in Korean, instead of goodwill, I would have said Chung. I'm trying to make Chung tangible to people. I'm trying to make it quantifiable. I'm trying to make it operationalizable. And I think the world needs Chung.
James, so I just want to be mindful of time. We have a few questions. Maybe we could just do these rapid fire, and then I want to get back to the movie, because obviously you just came from a trip from LA, but we'd love to get more into like how you see this playing out. But a couple of quick questions, let's make these short. You mentioned real leadership when referring to the women at Ashley. Will you share with us what qualities real leaders possess?
I think real leaders, first of all, they lead from behind. There's that story about in the book where my mom purposely didn't win the picnic race, and I was mad and then she looked at me and said, "Yeah, you want me to beat the little boy?" And she's like, "You want me?"
Yes.
And I said, "Yes." And it's one of the few times my mom looked at me and like it was like darts. And she said to me, she's like, "This is what I raised? Like, you think winning is just winning at all cost, and like when you have all the leverage in the world to beat somebody?" And she just gave me the, like, I was so embarrassed. I was ashamed. So leaders don't do that, right? So I think from a musical standpoint, leaders create an environment where people are allowed to sing, like be themselves. So I detect people sometimes when I'm like, "Oh, why do you sound that way? Like you're like an oboe in F major, but you pretend to be a cello in G. Why are you changing your voice?" And we've all done that, right? And my parents definitely had to do that when they took the Americanized names. And so a leader creates an environment where people can be. And your job is to have people play their melodies and have the melodies create more beautiful melodies. I don't know if that makes sense. And you conduct. And generally speaking, like in Asian philosophies, leadership is invisible. But when it's gone, you feel it. Leadership's very quiet, right? It's like water. It's relentless, and it's very humble, it's very quiet, and you let people win. And if you do it right, people know. Like for my dad, they came to his funeral, they knew. And my dad didn't know. But I saw it.
Okay, just to keep moving on. So TLDR, leaders conduct, they don't beat small children. Could you describe your approach to parenting? How do you make sure your kids grow up with the same values and Koreanness you had as a child of immigrants, but also enjoy the privilege of being part of the next generation? Great question.
Yeah. My kids are half white, half Korean. I think the pride that they have in being Korean, it makes me I'm very grateful. Like when they speak about their Koreanness, I'm like, wow. I didn't feel that way in the 1970s and 80s.
Yeah.
So they're really proud of it. The way that we're raising them is to sort of be like little helicopters. And I spent some time with the high school students. I just said, I don't want you to be an airplane. I want you to live your life like a helicopter. You have to be very agile. You can move in 6 different directions, right? Sometimes you have to hover. You got to know how to land. It's not going to be a linear growth. Can you do this, right? And you have to fly it. I want you to fly your own helicopter. I don't want you to be a passenger in someone else's airplane. Like, own your helicopter, own your decisions. So that's how they're being raised.
Yeah. Okay, great. 2 more questions. If you're persuaded that kindness is the way, where do you start?
If kindness is where do you start? First, by defining it correctly. So
And it's not niceness.
it is not,
You know,
right? So first of all, math, I define math in the book too, right? And I eviscerate accounting. For many people in finance, like accounting is like math. I'm like, no, accounting's made up. Math is science. Math is like laws of physics and laws of nature. So that's math, right? Math is very humbling. We discover math. We don't own it. And kindness is like this too. Kindness is not kindness. Without going into it in detail, what I decided kindness, the eureka, it's an exchange. It's a mutualistic exchange where you're investing in someone else's agency. So teachers do this, right? Like caregivers do this. And right now, if you think about the industries that are getting the most shellacked in this country, it's caregiving industries. It's an unkind economy. And we have to find it again. Because, I mean, we know intuitively, no education system, no care, it's not much of a society. I don't care what GDP says.
Yeah. Okay, last question. This is a tough one. Kindness and innovation. Do you think the Wikipedia donation funding structure can scale? AI makes impactful applications easier than ever, but user costs are higher than visiting Wikipedia. That's a tough one.
I'm not sure I answered that question.
That is, I think, let's see, do you think the Wikipedia donation funding structure can scale? So, trying to marry kindness with innovation, so basically relying on donations in order to form a corpus of knowledge and information.
I guess I'll answer, it's not going to directly answer this, and I'll this is my sort of experienced Q&A where I answer the question, but in a different way. But we are priming, and this is why Kahneman sort of ended up being disgusted with a lot of his theories and saying people can't behave correctly. Right? They'll always not behave correctly, and I'm done. And they'll never use systems 2, it's just systems 1, and people act like this. Well, we designed a system, and I know it's not at a country scale, but in this ecosystem, which was not easy either, where we created org behavior and messaging that got people their best behavior. And kindness has a direct correlation with your nervous system. You can't be kind and generous when you're scared. When your sympathetic nervous system is activated, when it's fight or flight, you can't be generous. So when I say kind cultures, it's very Zen-like. It's activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which is what you try to do when you do yoga. Right? So when you're in your parasympathetic mode, which Pixar, the entire neuroscience of Pixar is based on Berkeley Keltner's work, it's the vagus nerve when you breathe. When you're breathing and your parasympathetic nervous system is activated, you are using your highest function thinking of your brain. So when I'm saying kind environments, it's not just, civically kind. I'm asking people to think. It is no one's ever accused me of being part of non-high performance environments. The environments I'm a part of, they're very high performance, but there's no, pss, pss, pss. It's very direct, and it's truth-seeking. I don't suffer fools very well. I don't. I want the truth. And so these environments that are kind, people feel very safe to try to ask questions to get to the truth. And that's what a kind culture does. So that's my Wikipedia answer. I think to scale it, We have to do a better, like, look where we are. I mean, we are priming, we're all living in a casino right now. Our kids are living in casinos. And the scientists are advising people to live in casinos. We can do the opposite. In a lot of ways, I'm using that same science and saying, can we flip the vector? Can we do it opposite? Can we get people to make better decisions? We know how. The question is, will we? And that is a definition of leadership topic. Do we have the will to do that? And I think they deserve it. So that's why I'm writing the book. That's why I'm teaching a lot these days. I'm spending my time with young people.
Quick time check. How much time do we have? Just want to make sure we're... Oh, 4 minutes? Okay. All right, so let's get back to your book and the movie. So
Yes.
what are you hoping to accomplish with the movie? And you have some unconventional ideas on how this movie could be produced in terms of who's participating. Yeah. Can you maybe elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, the book is spreading internationally, and it's spreading across a lot of different demographics. I think it's helping unify. I think the purpose is for it to find the common humanity in a lot of people. That's number one. Number two, the movie. I've never done that before, but I knew that when you read it, it's structured as a musical, and when you read it, you'll say, oh my gosh, it's a musical, it's a movie. And so I have a lot of inbounds from people who are interested in turning this into a feature-length film. And I had to sort of think, do I really want to do this? And I'm thinking about my parents going, yeah, you really want to? But if it's financed correctly, it's the right investors, and I'm asking and inviting that it benefits the not-for-profits and civic institutions that I want it to benefit, like CKA, right? And that it's done collaboratively and produced by different demographics, white, Korean, Black, Spanish-speaking, because it wasn't just Black, we had a lot of Latina, it was Caribbean Black. If these groups fund it together, produce it together, and create it together, much like what we did at Ashley Stewart, then you have it's common ownership, it's common messaging. So that's the intent, that's the process by which I want to do it. And people intuit it already. I'm getting emails already and saying, oh, there's a Forbes article that says, where's Steven Yeun and how come he's not starring in this movie already? There was I said, I just started laughing. I'm like, that's really funny, right? And I've always, I've met Viola Davis's husband before. Her publisher is my publisher. Yeah. And so all of these things I'm picturing, could Steven and Viola, like, why not? And really the book and the movie, the way I want to tell the movie, the protagonist in the book, it's not me. I'm the first-person narrator, and I'm sort of the bumbling Oedipus, not Oedipus, but Odysseus, right? I'm just sort of discovering myself, and the people who are the protagonists in the book, they're all women. It's my wife who said, you can do it. Because my courage faltered a lot during the process. I was lonely. I just was like, I don't know if I can do this. And my wife was like, that's not who I married. And then it was the Black women who really sustained me, and it was my mother. And when we play the song at the end of this, when times were the worst, I would think about my mom. I'm like, I just cannot fail. It's not going to happen. And so the protagonists are all women, and I'm thinking with the movie, how beautiful would it be if it told the story of a Korean woman and a Black woman, and my wife is a white woman, and tell that story and their relationship with their children, but particularly their sons. So a lot of the feedback I get these days, a lot of women are reading this, my Brene Brown audience, and they say we're worried about our children, but particularly our sons. It's been a pattern in the feedback that I'm getting, that our sons they're just worried about them, that they're worried that they have to go and fight. It's like, that are we going to lose that boy, the imaginative boy, the sensitive boy, they're not talking about their emotions. that's the dynamic that's happening. 2 months in, it's mothers and sons are reading the book.
That's wonderful. We're out of time. Do you want to just give a bit of context on the music that folks are going to hear as
Sure.
we're leaving out?
So believe it or not, before I wrote the book, it was music first. And so when I invest in things, I always hear a brand's voice. I'm like, like Meow Mix cat food. I'm like, got it. I'm serious. Like when I invest, I hear different brands have different timbres, and they just do. And increasingly, neuroscience is just, the music neuroscience studies, you'll see in 20 years there's going to be much more definitive work on this. So the song that you hear, it's the entire book in 2 minutes and 20 seconds. The entire emotional arc of the book, because I write about fractal theory in the book, about small things, and this is the fractal of the entire book done in music. The first piece you're going to hear is Arirang, and you're going to hear it exchange hands. Really, it's the voice of my mother. And then the next song you're going to hear is Amazing Grace, which most of you know is very important to all of us, but Black culture. They're both in pentatonic, and the whole piece is done in E-flat major. So you're going to hear what a transformation internally and externally sounds like. You're going to hear both my parents pass. You're going to hear the women of Ashley Stewart coming to support me. You're also going to hear my courage falter when I didn't want agency anymore. I wanted to just look the other way. And you're going to hear my mom singing at me and saying, like, Hajima, like, go. And so if we can play it, this is the entire book in 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
James, thank you so much for being here, for giving us the gift of your time and your stories. Thank you to all of you for joining us here tonight. You can follow James and his upcoming ventures on Instagram or going to redhelicopter.com. And please join us outside the auditorium after this is over. James will be out there signing copies of his book, which are also available for purchase. So please join me in giving a final round of applause to James.
Woo! Thank you very much. That's fun. A lot of fun. Thanks.